everybody, Dawn Kendrick here with some good news. And the good news is that you're only going to hear good news here. I am a repurposed news reporter, and I am finally doing the stories that have been burning in my heart for so long. They're stories that uplift, encourage, and inspire, and they are real, and they're raw, and they're vulnerable. They're the good stuff stories, and we see it over and over again that through it all, through the middle of our biggest challenges, together we can, together we will. Let's go see the good and be the good. On your mark, get set, let's go. Hey, y'all, we are so looking forward to bringing you our God at Work series of stories over the next few months. We named them God at Work in honor of my mama, Marlene Kendrick, who passed away on February 23rd. Because if you knew our mama, you knew those words, God at Work. She was forever teaching us to see God in everything. So this series is for you all as much as it is for ourselves, and reminding ourselves that we can, in fact, allow God to work through us by seeing the good in others and being the good for them. Hey, good stuff, family. This is the Abra Schweikert story, the story behind Maggie's and More. They're in Hiram, Ohio. It's a tiny little donut coffee shop in a tiny little town who are doing big, fantastic, lead by example things for our friends who are differently abled. I was able to go down there and I saw it in action. And I'm being honest when I said I didn't want to leave. You can ask them. I stayed a while. I had some coffee, I had some donuts, and I was able to soak up the employees who work there. And they are the sweet spot. That's not just a cliche turn of words at a donut shop. They are the sweet spot. And it's why customers come in. And it's because Abra Schweikert knew from experience in working with our friends who are differently abled what they needed, a couple tweaks in her words, to give them this, not only a purpose-driven life for them, but to have a place where people want to come so that they can experience just really how awesome she knows that these friends of hers are. So I'm going to bring her in right now. Abra, good morning.
Good morning, Dawn.
Hey.
Thank you for meeting us.
Oh, my pleasure. Will you step a little closer to your camera and your mic? Yep, perfect. Okay, so I set it up that you've taught for almost 30 years. The last part of that was specifically in schools with kids with disabilities. Give me a window into what it was that you saw for all the stuff they're taught in school. What happens once they're out of that environment?
So I was finding, I think my first student that went through and came to the end of the school umbrella's name was Margaret Salzman. And as I watched the process of Margaret heading through the school umbrella and getting to the end of the road, the question in her parents' mind was, what happens next? What would she be doing next? And as I kind of followed as my students were going through, what they were doing next was very unknown at the end of the school umbrella, and opportunities were very limited. I started to hear, things of sweeping churches or doing dishes behind the scene. And Margaret, for example, has a personality that needs to be shared. She's quite a hoot, and she's incredibly capable. And so I had this vision in my mind, also from a dream of theirs. Many of them would say to me they wanted to go to college. They wanted, to do the things that your typical peers were doing. They wanted those opportunities too. And so this opportunity to purchase a donut shop sort of fell in our lap. And then all of a sudden a vision popped in our head, and I dragged my husband along and my family, and here we are 4 years later.
It's and it literally yesterday is when you celebrated that 4-year anniversary.
Yep.
And give me, would you give the people, I know because I was there, but give us kind of a window into this statement. I love it. You can find it on your website right here. It's Maggie's and More. Is it maggiesandmore.com where people can find you?
It's Maggie's and More. It's a Wix site. It's my site at wix.com.
Okay. All right. And so this is where I found that quote. Will you read it for me and then to explain to me more what that means?
Yeah, so the philosophy behind my teaching in Maggie's and More too has been, my students have always been a square peg that are being asked to fit into a round hole. I found as a teacher and here at Maggie's and More, my job was not to change that square peg, but rather to mold the round hole so they could fit in it with success. This is the foundation behind Maggie's and More. I was finding in the school umbrella that our students were being asked to be somewhat of who they weren't. Their unique abilities, although were accepted through an IEP and the needs that they had, sometimes their placements in school weren't allowing for them to really pursue their strengths. There's a graduation requirement, 26 credits to graduate, and so they were in this box that they were being asked constantly to fit into. And my gift that I've been able to give at Maggie's and More is to take that box and instead of trying to put them as that little round peg into that square hole and constantly fighting for them to fit, I've been able to change the way that looks so that they can fit with what they're able to do. And I think one of the things that always hit me the hardest was that social aspect. As they went through school, and I'm at a middle school level, the gap between the regular ed and special ed students, although they're both climbing, it's kind of going like this. And so the gap begins to get bigger and bigger. And just like you and I, we go out for coffee with our peers that we can connect to and relate with, and those are their peers. And it was okay for them to have friends amongst each other. And that was sort of a piece of the mission behind Maggie's and More too, was to help them find those connections, help them not be always struggling to fit into what they weren't necessarily able to fit into.
And I listen to you speaking now, and I noticed when I was there too, there is zero amount of pride about you in your mojo. It is the most genuine, humble mama of 6 kids herself who is working so hard, and it's successful. But there's zero anything from you that I picked up about credit, wanting credit, which is the best good stuff, people who we love the most. But I want to, before we go any further, I want to show this t-shirt. This was on the back of Tyler's t-shirt, right?
Yes.
And what does it say?
So the Maggie's part of our name comes from the donuts that we sell, but the More was the acronym that we created behind the mission. So the M stands for meaningful, the O stands for opportunities, the R stands for reaching, and the E stands for everyone. And that truly is our mission and is the forefront of our name and the forefront of our business.
And the opposite of the front, we're looking at the back now of Tyler. Look at his hand. It speaks if a picture's worth 1,000 words, this one speaks volumes. Does it not? Look at him. He's making like strong arms. So proud. He's so proud to work there. So give me a window into Tyler's story.
So Tyler actually is a former student of mine. I had the pleasure of being his teacher through his middle school years, which I think I have 9 now of my employees are former students of mine from my teaching career, which is incredibly rewarding to see where they are now at the end of the road and that they I can still continue to be part of their successes. So Tyler graduated. He just turned 21 in May. And I kind of lost touch with him, went through the high school. I'm still down at the middle school. You hear tidbits here and there. But once he graduated, I wasn't really sure where Tyler was at next. Until one day I was in Walmart, and all of a sudden I look over and there's Tyler and his mom. And so for the first time in a little bit of time, I got a chance to catch up with him, only to learn that he was home, that he wasn't really working. He was playing a lot of video games, hanging out just at home. And I mentioned to him, why don't you come give Maggie's a try? So he showed up on a Sunday. He was an absolute rock star. And he has taken on 3 mornings a week being on our opening shift. He gets up probably at 5 so that he's here by 10 to 6 or so and opens up the donut shop and is our first shift on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. And what's been really cool about watching Tyler is Tyler has a bit of anxiety behind him. And he gets to the donut shop and you would never guess it. He's got such confidence in himself now. He truly is a leader on the shift when he's working and pretty much can run almost anything at the store. And this was someone who was sitting home playing video games because he couldn't find the right fit for him in the work world. This is his Friday morning crew that he works with. There's Tyler, and in the middle is Alexa, and that's Nikki, and they're our Friday morning opening crew. And as you can see from Tyler, thumbs up, big smile. It's certainly his happy place.
It is his happy place. And I saw it. I saw it when I was there and I met all 3 of them. And what I saw was he mentors
Mhm.
Alexa and Nikki, watching him show, how to make the egg so you have sandwiches, and it all comes down to tweaking the things that the rest of us might take for granted. Will you give us a window into what it is that makes these kids, not kids, adults who are differently abled, what makes them so successful there?
So I think one of the things that I brought into the business was some knowledge, of special needs and abilities, and so all we've done is done some very simple tweaks in the donut shop that allow them to be independent in what they do. So let me show you one of them. Um, we make smoothies here at the donut shop, and everything at the donut shop is based on the number 3, and that came from my experience of knowing in memory. The maximum for most of my employees and my students is 3 things that can fit inside their memory box in a moment. So there's 3 steps to making a smoothie, and the first step was for them to get the fruit, which is already measured out. It's one of the tasks that they have to prepare and keep the donut shop up and running. But then simple tweaks of 2 measuring spoons. One is large and one is small. Doesn't need to know a cup and a quarter cup. Doesn't need to know, the measurement of each. But what they do know is that the other 2 ingredients are a gallon of milk, and you can probably guess that's the big cup, and then some whipping cream, which you can probably guess then is the small cup. So you don't have to worry about the measurement. I match the size of the container to the size of the measuring spoons, and that allows them to be able to do it pretty much independently by themselves. They don't have to ask. And you can sit back and watch them make a smoothie for you with no assistance. And these were individuals that may have been, doing dishes behind the scene or sweeping the church, as I mentioned, that can now make you a smoothie with that one small little tweak. Same thing happened with our espresso machine behind us. We were able to purchase a machine that if you've ever been in a coffee shop and seen baristas, there's constant measuring of things. We were able to get an espresso machine that had everything pre-measured for them. So once again, 3 steps. They grind the beans, which is already pre-measured for them. Then they put their cup, they hit their button, and away goes their espresso shot. Simple tweak. So that we could create an already pre-measured so that they're able to do it independently too.
And it's genius in its simplicity.
Yeah, and it's incredibly rewarding to watch. Even what somebody, I've had multiple people come in and experiment with the job and say, oh, but they can't read or they can't manage money. And then I'll have them try it out with me, and it's amazing what they're capable to do because of those very simple tweaks. Our cash register is icon based. Our monies are based on a dollar amount. Our register tells them exactly how many dollar bills, and so they can run it completely independently, even if they are a non-reader.
I want to remind our listeners, if you're listening in podcast mode, you can go to thegoodstufffamily.com and you can see the video stream. We have links to our YouTube page where you can see the video stream where Abra is explaining all of this, and you can see the faces at this coffee shop. It's so much more. It's aptly named Maggie's and More because it's so much more. And I know that you want to take it even to another level. You're constantly thinking ahead. You weren't a business person. You were like me. Like all you had was a passion. And your husband said, it took him a day to say, okay, let's see how we could do this. And you're already thinking ahead. If the more business you get, you've got another plan in store, because right now the donuts come in ready to sell. Tell me how you're thinking ahead for these.
So I keep thinking layer upon layer. Some of my employees have been with me 4 years. They've mastered many of the steps of the job, and then how can we continue to make it our own? Since we don't make the donuts here, they're produced at the main Maggie store in Middlefield. I have this idea of next creating a decorating room where we could bring in the donuts undecorated, and create kind of a round table with some wells where they could frost, and they could then decorate them with Snickers bars, Reese Pieces. They could create a creation kind of like they do with our espresso drink of the month. So those donuts then become theirs. We've kind of added layers as we've done it. We added the espresso machine. We built and added a patio one summer. And now our next thing we're staving for is to create that decorating room that will allow the employees to be bakers per se. We're also going to start some gluten-free desserts this summer. One of them is called a Hollywood Square, a very simple recipe, once again, peanut butter and chocolate, and we're going to experiment with making that ourselves to sell in the donut shop to offer some gluten-free options too. Everything that we do here is done by them. So we don't bring anything in branded. They brand it with a stamp. We don't bring anything in already pre-measured, pre-cut, or anything like that. They are doing all of that themselves. So the bagels come in, they cut them, they bag them, they label them for sale. And so each and every part of here is their capabilities.
I'm not surprised either with your creativity, and you're always thinking of the next step. When I saw Tyler in action, he it's appropriate that you're standing in front of the sign. This was his own concept.
Oh,
He's so
yes,
creative, right?
yes.
Uh,
So
Tell me.
it was really quite fun. So we do a drink of the month, and we do. It was fun. Eric was on a trip with me down to present at Bethany College in West Virginia, to talk about giving opportunities and chances. And in the car on the way down, we came up with the next drink of the month, which was a chocolate chip cookie dough latte. And so one day Tyler was working with our other manager, Alec, and they thought, people keep coming back asking for these. Let's create a menu board. So behind me, we have our Espresso Yourself menu board, which Tyler created the name. All of a sudden, he's like, well, it's espresso, but we're expressing ourselves by coming up with these drinks and these drink titles. And so they are our specialty drinks that have been kind of designed and created by our employees. And thanks to Tyler, have been given a pretty unique name as an Espresso Yourself.
He's so creative. And it's because you put him in a position to be creative.
And
And
he's very proud of it, very proud, which is so wonderful to see that pride come out.
he was making my sandwich and he said, "Let me tell you about the one that's all meat." What does he call the all meat one?
And which one is that? The breakfast sandwich? It's the B.
Yes, the loaded BS.
Yes, the loaded BS. And you think BS, but it's really the loaded breakfast sandwich. And it has just about every kind of meat on it that we can put on a panini or breakfast sandwich in the shop.
Right. And obviously, a load of BS we've heard, but how creative that he comes up with this. So now, not only is he mentoring people there, training people, he's creative. Here's also what I saw. This grandpa comes in with his 3
Oh,
grandchildren, and Tyler goes to the other side, gets down to their level, looking through to pick the donuts, and look at him. This is what you don't get everywhere else. This is exactly what you don't get everywhere else. He relates to these kids, and you can tell that the grandpa and these kids are so appreciative, and that's why they keep coming back. You see it every day, don't you?
you do, and you get your regular customers, you know them by name. We even get certain community members that will come in on certain days, so that they can have their donuts packed by certain employees. One of our employees, Kelly, comes in on Saturday with her Uncle Bob, and Uncle Bob always is looking for Jen to pack his donuts. And then we have the former fire chief from Hiram, Gary, who comes in on Sundays, and he has Kelly pack his donuts, and Kelly's got his order memorized. And that's been really cool to see how the employees are making the connection to the community members, and how welcoming they are. And I've had multiple people come back or place a phone call afterwards to tell me about their experience in being there. And sometimes I'll get that phone call and they'll say, I need to talk to you about being in your shop. And my heart starts racing because I'm like, oh no, what went wrong? And they're wanting to tell me and thank me for that opportunity just to take a minute to watch the capabilities. One lady called one day and said, I was in a rush, and I was standing in line, and I was getting very anxious. And she said, but all of a sudden I stopped and I watched. And she said that was exactly what she needed that morning. And so it's really nice to be able to touch the community that way and have the community touch the employees that way. And I think it's given my employees a place to belong. They are part of the community, even though they aren't maybe living in our community. They are very much part of our community here in Hiram.
And I'm so glad. We say community. I hated that word in broadcast news. I tried to use any other word but that because it's so nebulous. It's just so kind of bland. But what you're doing is, will you tell the story about the guy? I think he lives nearby. You wouldn't have known him had you not had Maggie's and More. And now he's like family. Tell me that story if you will.
So he's one of my, this is one of my favorite Maggie's and More story. I actually found him, for Latin, quote unquote. His father and stepmother had moved into the village, and they couldn't find their coffee pots. So they came down to Maggie's. to get some coffee. They're just down the road from us, and they looked around, they saw our wall of fame, and Aaron, his stepmom, was like, these are my people. And all of a sudden I met them out in the parking lot. We chatted and learned about Mitch. And so Mitch began working with us every other Sunday when he was visiting his father, and he's an absolute rock star. But when the pandemic hit, he wasn't working with us. They kind of put it on hold while COVID was heightened, and his mom was a little bit concerned and cautious about him coming to work. And Mitch knew at the beginning of May, things were going to start to open up. And so he goes to his dad's shop at the beginning of May and tells him Maggie's work. And I think Dad started to say to him, well, Mitch, we need to talk to Mom. We need to talk to Terry. So Mitch was okay. But then he came back again. The next visit had a Maggie's work shirt on, told Dad Maggie's work. And I think Dad must have started to say maybe no to him. Because the next thing I know, I get a phone call that says, do you have room for Mitch today? Because he's ready to work, and he's walking down to work. And so we look out the window, and there we see Mitch coming up the sidewalk. He was not going to be denied. He was coming back to work, whether they said yes or no. So we give a big shout through the drive-through window. He starts booking down the sidewalk, comes through the door, gives us a high five, puts his gloves on, and he's ready to work. And I think that was the biggest testament about the meaning of work for individuals with special needs. And it just was one of the most heartwarming sights just to see him running, let alone the fact that he kind of was not going to be denied. He's going to walk.
Now, how many employers are listening to this right now thinking what they wouldn't give to have employees running into work? Right.
Well, that was during COVID. People would say, oh, I'm having such trouble finding help. I'm having such trouble keeping my help. I'm not able to stay open as late. And I would say to them, hire a differently abled adult. They're hardworking. They want to work. They're committed to work. And it's very simple tweaks or very little support for them that can make them successful in just about any job.
And what was your quote that I loved? I've often spoken at events for Down syndrome support groups. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if the whole world had just a touch of Downs, because we work harder, we love harder, we forgive quicker, we hug and we mean it, we hold on a little longer. I love your quote, especially about Downs community.
So I've always said I've not met a Down syndrome individual that doesn't remind me every single day how simple and happy life should be. They come to work with a smile on their face. They bring joy to just about anything they do. And they remind me as I watch them, even in the midst of a bad day, how simple and life should be. You know, those little tiny things are not things necessarily to be worried about. And they bring such laughter. We've gotten multiple cards back from people. We have our employee, Margaret, that I mentioned, who asks everybody who comes to the register, what are you having for dinner? And then when they leave, she tells them Merry Christmas. So we will have multiple people come in looking for the dinner lady and being ready to tell Margaret what they're having for dinner that day. And she just brings such a smile to people's face, you know, with that tiny little thing, that she was one who wasn't working out in the public, that wouldn't have had a chance for community members to see that.
Again, it seems so simple to me, just put them out in front. But what it took was a superhero with a heart of gold like you to say, let's make it work. And then for Jim, your awesome husband, to say, all right, let's do it. That is purpose-driven lives for you two. It's a calling. And I want to, God, there's so many angles of this story. But before I go any further, again, thegoodstufffamily.com if you want to see the images we're pulling up. But look at this. Okay, so obviously Abra has the extended family we've been introducing you to at Maggie's and more. This is her family at home. Abra, I mean, you have a full-time job teaching. So introduce us, if you would, to this family of yours and an adopted one as well in town. Give me that story again, if you would, for our viewers.
So Jim and I are very blessed with 6 pretty awesome kids. Our oldest daughter, Romy, is now 25 and was a special ed teacher. She also has that heart of gold in the world of special ed, but married a couple years ago to the aide that was part of my classroom. And they just had a new little baby boy. So she's left teaching for now, but she lives over in Ritztown and is close by. And I'm sure one day we'll find her way back to that special ed field. My second daughter is Addie, who's 23, and she was my IEP child. She has a quirky, unusual auditory processing disability that makes language and understanding kind of the world around her a little bit more difficult. But she had an incredible school experience through Crestwood Schools, went on to what was called the OASIS program at Mercier's College for individuals on IEP. And she now is a teacher's aide in a preschool classroom, like an integrated preschool classroom with special needs and regular ed kids in Aurora schools. Gracie is a freshman at Bethany College. She too would like to teach. She's what I call my already born kindergarten teacher. Charlie is 17. He does not want to teach. He's the one out of the six that is very sports oriented and wants to be a sports broadcaster, but still job coaches at the store, maybe sometimes grudgingly, but with a smile on his face. Augie is 16. He too wants to teach. Someday he hopes to be a middle school teacher and a middle school coach. And then Elby is 12 and in the sixth grade. And the really neat thing about all of my children is how much they too have embraced Maggie's and more. We always have our dinner table stories to share. The employees have become part of our family in so many different ways. And my children during the summer, they are our job coaches and managers. So they each spend a day at the shop. And it's quite funny because they will argue about which shift and who they're going to have. And this summer I told them, you got to think differently, guys, because some of them have been on the same shift for two summers in a row. And so I switched a couple of them around. So they got to work with some of the other employees, which is kind of fun. And then we have a little he's now 10, a little autistic boy that's being raised by his grandparents in the village, that spends quite a bit of time with our family, that to me has become kind of like our extension of our seventh child in the family. So we're very, very blessed. And we're very blessed. I think they all have that same, I've always said in the world of special ed, people have empathy, compassion, and patience. And they're just kind of innate qualities in people that work in the world of special ed. And I think my kids have it, even Charlie.
There's so many layers that lead right back to you and Jim. And that is classic The Good Stuff, because you're seeing the good in these employees that you have. And then you're able to so easily be the good for them. And the ripple effect, like throwing a rock into a pond, is just exponential of the people who've come in there and have seen firsthand the next time that they have an opportunity to meet and be friends with someone who learns differently, is the square peg in the round circle, or whatever.
The square hole in the round peg.
Exactly. Thank you. We're going to have an opportunity to be like, wait, I bet I could have as good of an opportunity with this person, as good of an interchange and a conversation as I had at Maggie's and more. And so that's how it just continues to one person, the ripple effect that you've had. I want to make sure we get this story in about, is it Mark, guy across the street? You wouldn't have known him. Comes in every day.
So Mark lives catty corner to the donut shop. He's in his 60s. He has a dog named Tubbs, rightfully named Tubbs for a reason, a beagle. And Mark comes every single day into Maggie's, 2 apricot donuts, a large coffee with 4 creams and sugars. I got to know him prior to owning the shop, just by working here on a Sunday. He's become a great family friend now, spends some of our Christmas dinners with us. And Tubbs gets his weekly donut on Sundays just from Kelly. He gets a plain cake donut. And Tubbs knows when it's Sunday because he comes in barking away. And we've been so blessed to have, I would not have known Mark without the donut shop. And he's become a very important person to our family. And he's taken on the landscaping of the business for us. So he mows our lawn for us. In exchange for his coffee and his donuts, which where else can that happen, right? And he's on our wall of fame, rightfully so, because he's a very important part of Maggie's and more, and very important to the employees. The other day, Jen was working and we were swamped. We had these orders to fill. We're swamped. I look around, I'm like, where's Jen? She's sitting over having a muffin with Mark while he had his donuts and coffee. Can't get mad about that. She's visiting with the customer, which was pretty cool. To see.
You're pretty cool. And I heard you use the word blessed. That do you really see in ways that, even in the way that you acquired the donut shop, do you see God at work the way everyone else sees God at work through you?
It was, people talk about being in the right place at the right time, but I had a passion to develop a post-secondary program with Hiram College because my students talked about, especially one of my students, April, about wanting to go to college like everybody else. So I spent a couple years with them talking about a program similar to what Addie went to at Mercyhurst College, and it kind of fell apart. They took it and went with an autism initiative. I was kind of crushed. And one day while working at the donut shop, the old fire chief from Hiram comes in and asks when the shop's closing. And, I'm thinking 2:00. And he says, well, the mayor says it's really closing. And then I got a phone call the exact same day. And our friend Devin, who's one of Hiram's policemen that hangs out here with us and helps, answered the phone. And the gentleman asked the same question. When are you closing? And Devin responds to him 2:00, and he too had heard it was closing, which I thought was ironic. So I reach out to the owner, unbeknownst to Jim, and text him and tell him what happens, and said, well, if you ever are thinking of doing something, Jim and I would love to talk to you, unbeknownst to Jim. And he must have called me within 3 to 5 minutes. We sat down that Sunday, kind of talked about it. Jim kind of digested for a week. We went back and talked again to the owner and talked about how the business ran and the numbers and back and forth information about it. Next Sunday, we sat down again, looked at a cost for buying the shop, and got financing and signed on the dotted line 3 weeks later. And somebody out there was looking over us at that moment. They knew that that dream needed to be developed. And certainly somebody was looking down to have two people on the same day with the same comments. That wouldn't have prompted me to reach out to the owner if that hadn't happened.
And that's what we do. We just keep taking the next best step, myself included. And
Yeah.
you wait for those, oh, really, God, really? Like, all righty, let's go. On your mark, get set, let's go. So I also had the opportunity to meet Eric. Here's my friend. Just look again. This guy, what is he, 31, I think? Didn't we say 31?
Yeah, 31.
Look how happy he is. He came in, he wasn't even there 30 seconds. I didn't even get to meet him yet. You were trying to introduce us, and he said, hold on, I have this smoothie to make, right? Tell me a little bit.
Down and went off to the smoothie bar.
He did. He's like, I'll talk to you in a bit. I'm on the clock, right? He did.
And he was not waiting. I was going to try and have him put his name tag on first. Wasn't happening.
Here he is. Look at his smile. Honestly, this guy, I'm telling you right now, people need to be hiring more Eric. So that we can make sure that we introduce the listeners and the viewers to Eric. Eric and his mom, proud mom, Betsy, here as well. Hi, guys.
Hi. Hey.
Hey, friend. Hey, how'd you get the day off? It's because it's closed, right? That's the only way you get a day off.
I am tomorrow.
You're in tomorrow. See, that's it.
I'm taking day off tomorrow.
Yep. So you're not even thinking about your day off.
To help grandma.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I'll be back Thursday.
You'll be back on Thursday, right?
Yes, this week.
And so Eric is one of the employees that was a little bit area of contention with my children, who was going to work with Eric this summer. And Augie went out. Augie gets him on Fridays.
Best. Eric, do you want to tell everyone listening and watching why you love working at Maggie's and More?
Oh man. I think I want to practice doing the espresso machine.
You're learning how to make some of those espresso drinks, aren't you?
I am.
Yep. And what about Eric? What's your favorite thing to do at the donut shop?
I think the stamp.
Putting the labels on, stamping our logo on things, isn't it?
Yeah. But I gotta stamp it hard. Nice and dark.
You do a great job.
Eric, I saw you doing that. As soon as you said, oh, we're running low on bags, boom. And not only did you stamp them, right, Eric, you stamped them over at the table. Next thing you know, they were already in the drawer. He knows where to put them.
I do.
Yeah.
And Eric brings such a joy to the shop. He's our football expert. And
God, yeah. I gotta do a crazy away on football.
So whenever we get a chance, we can make a connection to football with our customers, can't we?
Yeah, we can.
Now, I know that, Betsy, you're just sitting there. I met you briefly too, and I know how proud you are. What has this Maggie's and More been for Eric in your eyes?
A lot. It's been a dream come true. He is now working locally and doing what he's always wanted to do.
And you know too, Mama Betsy, don't you? I wonder if Abra, you could kind of give us that story, and maybe Eric, you tell the story with Abra, would you? You were a huge Browns fan for a long time, but that has changed. Tell me about that.
It was right before he left the Browns.
Who left?
Yeah, it was Baker. Baker left. But now he's a Buccaneer.
And who did the Browns bring in, Eric, that made you done with them?
But I do like one.
Well, who's the guy that made you be done with the Browns?
Oh, that guy who went to court named Deshaun Watson.
You didn't like the acquiring of Deshaun Watson, did you?
No, but I do like two players off the Browns that I still like is Miles Garrett and Nick Chubb.
Who's become your favorite team now?
Oh man, the New York Jets and the Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers, not the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I am.
Basically,
Yeah,
anyone but the Browns.
You know what, Eric? You got great taste.
I do.
Eric, so you talk sports when people come in for coffee and donuts. You have fun talking sports with them?
Yeah.
All right. So anyone who's going to be heading into Maggie's and More, look for Eric to talk sports. Look to Tyler for creative genius. If you need some marketing, if you need some great ways to espresso yourself, Tyler's your man. And you have 23 special needs employees. Is that right? Age 20 to 40 years old. Is that right,
Yep.
Abra?
I think our oldest employee is 46 now.
All right.
So.
There's so much more. Let's quickly touch on what I saw this book. Not only, so she's a mama of 3. She's changing the lives of kids who she teaches full-time with disabilities. She's empowering 23 special needs employees at the time and growing at her shop. And in her spare time, you decided, Abra, to write this book, Meet Izzy. The story of her colored wires. You can buy this right there in the coffee shop, the best $10 you've ever spent. So I love that your concept that you share with these kids with Skittles. Let's start to wrap this up by explaining to the viewers and the listeners in really a way that almost anyone can relate to, and understanding different doesn't necessarily mean less.
And one of the things that's very important to me is that you walk tall and proud for who you are. And so as individuals came into my program, or peer buddies began to work with them, I introduce a disability through a jar of Skittles. And I'll put in some red Skittles and tell everybody that those are your brain wires. And in order for you to learn or understand something or communicate something, the red and red have to connect together. Then we dump the green Skittles in, we shake it up, and you begin to see that there's still red. You still learn, you still understand. But these green ones are our learning wire. And sometimes you'll have to ask a question, or you'll have to read something twice because that green is in the way of the red and red connecting. And so you're doing something to get rid of the green so red and red can connect. Then we'll dump yellow in, which is our communication wire, which many of our differently abled adults struggle with, and shake it up. And once again, you have red. So you learn and can do like everybody else, but you may have this green wire that's in there that you might have to ask something twice, or you've got this yellow communication wire that may need a little bit extra support with for you to get your message across. Once that happens, you clear them out and the red and red connect. Then we put blue in, which is your kind of your stubborn wire. I call it like you become ice in that moment. A lot of our anxiety-ridden kids, sometimes our autistic individuals get very stuck on something. Our Down syndrome individuals have a common streak of getting stubborn about things. And so now you got maybe some green, some yellow, and now you got that blue that's kind of frozen there, and you can't get the red and red to connect. And then we'll dump orange in, which is your ADHD wire, and I call it the treadmill wire. And the point of the whole analogy is for everyone to see that there's still red. No matter how many colors are in your head, there is still red. And that means that you are capable and that you can learn and you can do. And our job at Maggie's and More and in my classroom is to figure out how to get rid of the green, how to get rid of the yellow, how to get rid of the blue so that you can get that red and red to connect. And so some of those simple tweaks that we've made at Maggie's and More, the 2 different measuring spoons, allow for that green wire to get out of the way in that moment. You don't have to know a half a cup and a cup, and for the 2 of them to connect. And I think the cool part of the book is it ended up being illustrated by one of our customers in the store who's an animator looking to get into the field of animation. I was struggling to find an illustrator. He comes in regularly. We talk about his work, and all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, have you ever thought about illustrating a book? And so I'm very proud that I'm able to have offered somebody at Maggie's and More the chance to be part of this end product. And he's really talented and worked really hard with me on getting the finished product. So that was a pretty awesome piece to it too.
And that's the God weaves. Now watch him work. Yep. Again, we're overtime. Everyone says, you got to keep these things to half an hour. I try so hard, but with people like you, and there's more. So if you want to know more about all of these stories within the story of Abra Schweikert and how she is seeing the good and being the good, pop in. What are the hours there in Hiram at Maggie's and More?
We're closed on Monday, but we're here Tuesday through Friday from 6 to 2, and then Saturday and Sunday from 7 to 2. And people tell us come early because the donuts go fast. But if they go, we have smoothies, breakfast sandwiches, paninis, espresso drinks, muffins, brownies, also as part of that More part of our menu too.
And listen to me, I will vouch for this. This is not a paid endorsement. All of it fantastic. And I stayed long enough that I kept just adding regular coffee to my what was it? It was some way that Taya decided he could help me to espresso myself. And I had this fantastic drink that just kept on giving. I just kept adding coffee.
He made you a caramel craze.
That's what it was. It's right there on the board. I will highly recommend the caramel craze when you pop in. And I recommend you get as many hugs as you can while you're there from this woman who's such a dynamo, works all these hours. You would think when Friday comes, maybe they close up the shop and she goes home and relaxes on Friday night. Nope, this is what they do. They have Friday fun nights. They just had this one to celebrate Ty's birthday, and they go bowling. I mean, really, I feel so inadequate. I mean, whatever we're doing, is it enough to be an Abra? I don't know. Be an Abra. It should be hashtag be an Abra. And these are the faces. Look at their faces. These are our friends who may have typically, like we said at the beginning of this, been mopping floors or something in the background. This is what their faces look like when you give them the opportunity to shine. And the faces of the customers reflect it, wouldn't you say, Abra?
I would say yes. Yep, the social context just shines too here at Maggie's and More. The friendships that develop, and they lose that social context once they leave the school umbrella, and so that's an added bonus to what's at Maggie's and More.
Yes, and we're doing this one live. So I just checked in the comments. There's Alexis over there, right on the left in the green.
Yes,
with Ty. You know, she commented, she's here. Hi, Alexis. If you're listening still, here's what she said in the comments. Lovely meeting you, Dawn. Look at her. If she only knew, Alexis, if you only knew how lovely it was meeting you. Oh my gosh. Look at, I mean, these are people, when we say that we want, there, you can see the comment. When we say keep the people close who uplift, encourage, and inspire you, when you feel like their mojo is something that you can't do without, these friends who I met there, I'm telling you right now, these are the friends who will give you that. When you walk in, you're going to leave with, not a paid endorsement again, with so much more than donuts and lattes. And I even got the travel mug. I have the magnet on my car. Honestly, I'm a biggest fan because of just what grassroots good stuff you're doing there. So
thank you.
anything else you want to add? I'm so glad to now call you friend. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate you sharing our story, and I hope people will come in and get to meet some of the faces behind Maggie's and More, and take a moment to watch those capabilities and see what might be able to be spread out into their community. It's a pretty awesome thing, and there are 23 really big rock stars here at Maggie's and More, and I appreciate you taking time to share it.
Yes, thank you for being the good stuff and allowing me to see it firsthand. You'll see that everything there, I really can't say enough. The decorations on the walls, the comfy couch, you're going to want to stay. It's like Cheers, we said.
Yeah, everybody comes in and knows your name.
Right. And when you look at these things, I'm just going to share these quickly and we're going to wrap. Again, thegoodstufffamily.com. If you're watching and you want to see if you're listening in podcast mode and you'd like to see the visuals, each day is a fresh start. Like, that these signs, think outside the box. You're speaking to me because you have been there, done that. Today's a good day for a good day. Every day, a fresh start. How about this one? And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. That's what you've created there. Inhale the future, exhale the past. These are the messages that aren't just on the wall, but you see it in action there.
Thank you.
No, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. I hope to goodness that people are, if you live near Hiram or if it's a bit of a road trip, pack up the car. It is well worth it. It took me an hour to get there and back, and it was so worth it. I ended up staying like 6 hours or something. So when I say thank you for being the good stuff, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'll pull back Eric and Betsy quickly again. Thank you for joining us, Eric and Betsy. I'm glad to be your friends.
You too. Thank you.
Hey,
God bless you.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
This has been a Grassroots Good Stuff family production. Big love and gratitude to our friend Carlos Jones, who is the talented voice and creator behind this music that sets the tone for these good stuff stories. Huge gratitude and love as well for our social media director. She is Danielle Folk and is consistently going above and beyond. Follow her at Farmhouse Storyteller. And to the producer, My Travi, the glue that holds together the moving parts of this God-inspired endeavor. TheGoodStuffFamily.com is where you'll find links for all the things we're doing, including how to be a sponsor of a story. So grateful for our faithful sponsors who have already made so much of what we do possible. And of course, big love and gratitude for you, the listeners, helping to grow this Good Stuff family tree 2023. Welcome to the family.